Not chicken, smart.
Is it smart?
Good morning, everybody, and good evening in Israel. Okay. Dan, feeling better?
Good afternoon in New York.
Good afternoon in New York. I have to. And
feeling better, looking bad.
Okay.
Oh well.
No, it's fine. Okay. This is Torah Parshat Bo. Means to come. It's chapter 10, verse 1 through chapter 13, verse 16. In your handy art scroll, it's page 340 through 365. That's 105 verses. There are a total of 20 commandments in the Parsha. 9 positive, 11 negative. Most are related to the holiday of Passover, because we're getting into the final redemption and the redemption from going out of Egypt. So, first of all, how do you spell bo? In Hebrew, how do you spell bo? Beis and Aleph. Good start. What's the numerical value of Aleph? 1. And what's the numerical value of Beis? 2. Together, how's your addition? You don't have to take your shoes off? What?
Okay, 3.
3, very good. So Parshas Bo, the numerical value of the name is 3, and that's how many plagues are in the parsha. Okay, the last 3 of the 10 plagues that Pharaoh and the Egyptians were afflicted with. So the parsha begins where Hashem says, "Bo el Paro, come to Pharaoh." Question is, why does it say "come to Pharaoh"? It should be "go to Pharaoh." So there's an important lesson there, that God's saying, "Come with me," because God is everywhere. So of course there are other places in the Torah where it says "go," but occasionally the Torah gives us a change to teach us a lesson. Remember, come to Pharaoh because I'm going with you and you're coming with me, and God is really everywhere. There's even a kid song like that. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is truly everywhere. Up, up, down, down, right, left, and all around, here, there, and everywhere. That's where he can be found. So God is everywhere. Okay. Now, what's interesting is the verse tells us so Parsha begins, Hashem said to Moses, "Come to Pharaoh. I have made his heart and the heart of his servant stubborn, so that I can put these signs of mine in his midst, and so that you may relate in the ears of your son and your son's son that I made a mockery of Egypt and my signs that I placed among them, so that you should know that I am Hashem, that I am God." So the idea, and that's really what the Pesach Seder is really about. It's the idea of, among many other commandments, that we remember going out of Egypt and God's miracles that he did for us, and we pass it on from generation to generation. Interestingly enough, a typical Pesach Seder many times has 3 generations. How does it have 3 generations? Grandfather, parent, and child, right? Sometimes even 4 if there's a great-grandchild, right?
My great uncle.
Right? So there's an interesting calculation there, which I won't bother you with the math so much. How long is a generation?
50,
About
20, 30 years.
20, 30 years. So let's say 25, 30 years. If you look at every person is really at 3 generations, because they're there as a child, then they're there as a parent, and then there as a grandparent, and maybe even a great-grandparent, right? So it's 3. So if you divide that into going back a long time, the first Seder was 3,300 years ago, divided by the 3 generations there, that's divided by 210, that's only 15. So it's like 15 sets of 3 generations. So the story of Pesach is going back a long time, but it's been repeated and said over so many times in the context of at least 3 generations within a person's lifetime, which is very interesting. So it's like we look at it, it's an old story. Who knows what this? Wait a second, it's really been. You take if let's say the number is 30 of how long a generation is. So the Seder represents a span of 60 years of history. 30 years before the grandfather, the father, and the further 30 years between the father and the son. But the grandfather was the grandson at his grandfather's Seder. So therefore, it's 7 times 30, which is 210, divided by the 3,300 years, and it comes out to be around 15, 16 groups of Siddharim, which is just an interesting side thing. So what does Pharaoh want? Pharaoh wants, who should go, he asks. And they warn him now that if he doesn't let the Jewish people out, and again, the same point, let my people go and they shall serve me. A very important addition to why we're being freed. And unfortunately, like I said, when the Soviet Union was not letting the Jews out, the posters all said, let my people go, but it didn't add that line, they should serve me. And if not, there's going to be an arba, grasshoppers, and will cover the entire earth and destroy whatever wasn't destroyed by the hail. So Pharaoh says, okay, go serve your God. Who's going? So Moshe says, with our children and with our elderly people, with our elders, with our sons, with our daughters, with our youngsters, the elders, and the flock with the cattle, because it's a festival for Hashem. And Pharaoh says, what? I'm not letting that. Only the men can go. Everybody else has to stay. Now, there's a key point that Moshe is making. That is, everybody in Judaism, every Jew has a role to play in service of Hashem. Maybe different, but they're all equally important. Everyone has a role, but they're all different, but equally important. And that's a very important idea. Because the idea is that even though, like I said, men and women may have different roles, a Kohen, a Levi, and Yisrael may have different roles in the service. Everyone has a different job. Even the kids. We invest a tremendous amount in giving Judaism to kids. Why do we do that? Because to prepare them for adulthood, but also as children, the Torah of children is very, very precious to the Almighty. And therefore, it's an important idea that Pharaoh couldn't fathom. Just to let the men go, let the women and the kids, everyone else stay back. They're not the key players. Everyone is a key player. Like the men may have a more public role, but everyone is a key player. And this is a very important idea. But before we go on, What's going on with the hardening of the heart of Pharaoh? It sounds like that he didn't have free will. God hardened his heart. So that's not fair. Take away his free will and then what? Punish him? So there are a lot of interesting answers for this. So one way of understanding this is, first of all, there's a very interesting saying from our sages. When you do a sin one time, you feel guilty, you feel regret. A second time, maybe it's really allowed. The third time you think, no, I'm supposed to be doing this. So Pharaoh, when people get locked into their behavior, what happens? They don't think anymore. They justify their behavior and think that, no, this is the right thing to do. And they're convinced that that's the right thing to do. And really, that's a mistake. So we get locked into it. Now, this is some interesting things from statements. Proof of man's intelligence is his freedom of choice. One of the great rabbis said, and that's a very powerful idea. Proof of man's intelligence is free choice. Intelligence, the fact that you can build a computer, that doesn't show intelligence, it shows capabilities, no question about it. I couldn't do it even if I had to get out of jail. I couldn't build a computer. But it doesn't show intelligence. The intelligence that we're talking about is to have free choice, to choose the right path. And the rabbis say when there's no free will, there are no good and evil impulses. Because it's not an impulse. If there's no free will, then everyone's like pre-programmed, like a computer. No, that's not what we believe. And here's a beautiful one, what the oral tradition says: the wicked are ruled by their heart, and the righteous rule their heart. So the question is, who's in charge? Is the heart in charge, or are you in charge? And so some of the commentaries learn that if I bang you hard enough, you're going to agree to me that whatever I say is right because I'm hitting you over the head with a 2x4, right? But that's not really free choice. Free choice comes where you take away the circumstances and you say, what's going to be? If I take away the pain of the plagues, now you have free choice. Now you can look at who's really right. So when it says that Pharaoh's heart was hardened, it doesn't mean that he had no free choice. It means that God said, forget about that you're getting banged with the plagues. Put that aside. What's the right thing to do? Should we let the Jews out? And when God took away the pain of the plagues, Pharaoh said, no, I don't want to let them go. And you could see a little bit from the text verse of proof. At the end of last week's portion on page 339, it says, Pharaoh saw the rain, the hail, and the thunder ceased, and he continued to sin. And he made his heart stubborn. And Pharaoh's heart became strong, and he did not send the Jewish people out. First, he was continuing to sin. And then, I said, oh, you're still sinning? Okay. So I'm not going to let this get in the way. Interestingly enough, one of the things that they saw was one of the things Pharaoh says is, so be Hashem with you as I send forth you with your children. Look, the evil intent is opposite your faces. Not so, let just the men go now. Sir Hashem, is that what you seek? And he drove them away from Pharaoh's presence. So what's it mean that I see bad in front of you? Pharaoh's astrologers said that I see blood This bad thing is going to happen to the Jewish people in the desert. And really, in fact, the astrologers weren't 100% wrong. They saw blood, but really the blood was from the blood of circumcision, that the Jewish people would circumcise themselves before they go into the land of Israel. So, we're not bound by the stars. We're not bound by the stars. We have the power to transcend astrology. We have the power to transcend, to send what it seems to be in the stars. All right. So, hardening of the heart is us many times, that we get used to the habits of this is what I'm doing. I had a long time ago, I had a woman who things in the world affected her, and she realized that Judaism is real. And she got involved a little bit, and then she said, I can't do it because I'm so used to living my past life that I just couldn't change. And it was so sad for me because she was a highly intelligent, wonderful person. And she just couldn't make the jump to change. No one was asking her to do everything in one shot, but whatever it was. But that's, to me, we get stuck in our past sometimes and don't realize that we can change and we can grow. And that's a very important idea. Okay, so the next plague, so the plague came out, the eighth plague of the grasshoppers, and the locusts swarmed the whole land. And then when it was time to end it, the locusts all left. Why didn't they keep them there? By the frogs, they kept them there. God kept them there. Why did they keep on moving? Why did they all leave? So even the locusts that they pickled, the Egyptians, I guess, snacked on them, some of them. So they pickled. It doesn't sound so crunchy and interesting to me to have pickled or chocolate covered locusts, but apparently some did. But even that flew away and left. Then came the Makkah of Cheshech, darkness, and there were two parts to the plague of darkness. Part number one was that the Egyptians couldn't see even during the day, and part number two, they couldn't even move. They were stuck. They couldn't move. And darkness is a very important symbol. Why is that an important symbol? Because it shows a lack of spirituality. The Egyptians, you've seen 8+1 plagues, and you're still stuck. Get out. It's so dark. It's so dark. There's no spirituality. The Jews were able to see, and what did they do? They went around, they were told to go to the Egyptian houses and see what they had, because the Jewish people are going to ask the Egyptians for things before they leave. And God said he's going to make them, all of a sudden, be gracious to them and give them gifts. So they want to know what they have, but no Jew stole from anybody. And interesting enough, if the darkness was so thick, the last few days they couldn't even move, why didn't the Jews escape then? Anybody? Any thoughts why the Jews didn't escape?
If they were waiting for the Pharaoh to say, go.
Why? You're right. They're waiting for Pharaoh. God wanted Pharaoh to acknowledge that they have a right to go, that they don't deserve to be in slavery here, and they should go out and serve God. And Pharaoh called them and said, but before it ended, there was a very tragic thing that happened during the plague of darkness. And that is the Jews who didn't want to leave died. Now, why wouldn't the Jews want to leave?
Life was easy over here.
It became easy. The plagues that made the work wasn't there anymore. And that's really an important lesson for us. You know, when the Messiah comes, God willing, how many of us are going to be willing to say, we're going to go to Israel and have the third and final temple and move and change? Well, I'd like to go, but I just bought my summer home and I just bought a new car and I have a pretty good job now. I don't want to let it go. So this is a sobering thought for us to think about that we don't belong here. We're grateful to the United States for the good that they've done. Anti-Semitism has raised its head again very dramatically, even in the United States. But we're very grateful. We can have a sign that says Jewish Learning Exchange, and people will walk in and have classes. And that's wonderful. But we don't belong here ultimately. Ultimately, the ultimate goal is to go back to the land of Israel. So the Jews that were not going to leave, they died during the plague of darkness. So the Egyptians didn't get to see that, but that's what happened. So the Jews are going to ask them for things. And interestingly enough, why are they getting it? So the Dubna Maggid has a very beautiful, they deserve it. They deserve to be paid for all the work. But besides that, the Dubna Maggid has a beautiful parable. He says, imagine there's a rich guy and he sees a kid on the block. He says, hey, I have some work for you. And if you do some work for me, you do well, I'll give you a bag of coins. And the kid's very excited and he does the work. And the man is really impressed with the hard work of this young little fellow. And he gives him, instead of a bag of coins, he gives him a bunch of bills. And the kid comes home and he's disappointed. Why? He expected a bag of coins. And instead he got these papers. Now the papers were worth a lot more than the coins. So the father goes, you've been really gracious. You gave him $100 and he really just promised him a bag of coins. Give him some coins as well, because he's a little kid. He doesn't understand the value of the $100. Give him the coins, let him feel good. So he did. So says the Rebbe Maggid, that's the parable for the Jewish people. God told Avraham, that the Jewish people would leave with great wealth. What he was really referring to was receiving the Torah. But the Jewish people were not mature enough to appreciate that yet. So first, give them some trinkets in the meantime. Let the Egyptians give them some gold and silver on the way out. Next is going to be the last of the 10 plagues, which is the plague of the firstborn, that all the firstborn were going to die of the Egyptians. But first, there is the idea of Rosh Chodesh. God shows Moses the image of what the moon is going to look like. And when you see the new moon, then you declare that it's a new month. So our calendar is a lunar calendar linked to the solar. How it's linked is for another time, but it's a lunar calendar. And we use the moon as our guide for when the new month begins. And as a matter of fact, tonight is going to be Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the new month of Shvat, the Hebrew month of Shvat. And the way it used to be declared would be witnesses would come and see the new moon and go to the court, and the court would say, it's Rosh Chodesh, it's the new month. We don't have that today, so we have the great Hillel created a calendar that we can use so that we know when the new month is. And knowing the new months are important to know when the new month is so that you know when the holidays are during that month. You got a question for me? Go ahead. I don't know what the Chinese use, and the Arabs definitely use it, but ours is a little different because it's also tied to the sun. So we make adjustments because it's a longer talk, but I'll just, in 1 foot, Passover has to be during the springtime. The lunar calendar is shorter than the solar calendar. So if we so I don't know what the question is, the Chinese use it also, let them use it. But if we always just had the lunar, then Passover would eventually go earlier and earlier into the winter, and it has to be in the springtime. So we adjust it by having an extra month. But now Rav Gifta has a beautiful, beautiful interpretation about why the moon is what we use as a calendar. So one reason, number one, is before a gift is taught, is that just like the moon waxes and wanes, so too the Jewish people. Sometimes we're at full strength, and sometimes we're weaker, but we're always around. Sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. Rabbi Gifta says a beautiful idea that the moon doesn't have any light of its own; it's just reflective. And the Jewish people, we're here to reflect God's light into the world, which is a very beautiful thought, a beautiful idea. Then the Jewish people are told about the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb, that they should take a lamb, bring it into their home, tie it to their bed, and make sure it's healthy. And why do they have to do that? Because it ended up being it's the deity that the Egyptians bow down to. And for the Jews to have the strength to be able to say, oh, why are you taking the lamb into your house? Oh, we're going to sacrifice it to a god. What? But they had the guts to do it, and God protected them. And that was a special thing. And that's why the Shabbos before Pesach is called Shabbos HaGadol, the big Shabbos, because that's when they took it into their home. And then on the 14th day of the Hebrew month of Nisan, they would ritually slaughter the lamb and put the blood on the two doorposts and on the top, and roasted it with matzah and maror. Sounds a little familiar? Okay, so again, we don't have the Paschal lamb because we have a temple. But be that as it may, that's when God passed over the Jewish houses that had the blood on it, passed over the Jewish houses, and killed the firstborn. Now you know why it's called Passover, because God passed over the Jewish homes and killed the firstborn. And there's a prohibition of eating chametz. We can't eat leavened bread on the holiday, and don't let the bread let it rise. And the whole process of making matzah is very complicated, so that it doesn't become chametz, it doesn't rise. And what does chametz represent? Chametz represents, it's blown up. It represents ego, represents being big, and matzah is humble. So that's what we have on Pesach time. We remember that when the Jewish people left, they didn't have time to bake bread, so they had the matzah. But it's also the bread of affliction and the bread of what we say at many important. We talk about many things. Now, I have to share a terrible story. I hate the story, but it's a powerful story. There was an Arab terrorist that had been jailed by the Israelis, and he was depressed because he felt that how are we going to win the Israelis? We're not going to be able to beat them. They're just their intelligence, their army, they're powerful. And it was Pesach, and he was in jail, and he sees an Israeli soldier eating bread on Passover. Now, the Israeli soldier, unfortunately, probably wasn't raised with very much at all. So the Arab says, hey, why are you eating that? Isn't that your Passover? You're supposed to be eating matzah, not this bread. And he says, I'm not religious. That was years ago. We don't have to do that now. And he had an epiphany. He said, if they're not connected to their past, we can beat them. And when the Israelis made one of these lopsided trades, and this guy went out, that's what he shared with his friends. He said, we can beat them because many Israelis are not connected to their past. And if they're not connected with the past, and we are, then we have strength. So I hate the story, but it teaches us a powerful lesson. If we're going to be connected, then we have a chance of survival. If we're not connected, then it's a real problem. Now there's a very interesting verse. It says "Ushmartem es hamatzos." You should guard the matzahs. What does it mean to guard them? That what? They don't rise. You got to make it fast. There's a whole process. When we get closer to Passover, I'll tell you how to do it. We don't have to do it. We pay people to make the matzahs, and that's we have the matzah that way. So there are no vowels in the Torah. The oral tradition tells us how to read the words. So it's ushmartem es hamatzos. So the commentaries say it's a play on words. The same letters ushmartem es hamitzvos. Watch the mitzvos. What do you mean watch the mitzvos? Watch the mitzvos so that they don't become chametz. How does a mitzvah become leavened? How does that happen? Well, how does a matzah become leavened? If you just leave it and let it rise, right? Before you bake it, if you just leave the dough around, it'll rise and then it becomes not good for Passover. It's chametz. So how does a mitzvah become leavened? Anybody?
They didn't have time.
No, I'm not talking about what happened with the matzah. I'm talking about what does it mean to watch the mitzvahs that they don't become chametz. You're close. The mitzvah that comes to your hand, don't wait. Do it right away. Mitzvah b'oliyotcha al tach mitzeno. The mitzvah that comes to your hand, don't let it become chametz. Move it. You have an opportunity to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow has a different mitzvah. Maybe this opportunity won't be here tomorrow. And even if it is, you could have done it yesterday. So just like the matzah, we don't let it rise. The mitzvah don't let it rise. If there's opportunity, grab it then, and so that you can do it. You can do it well. So the firstborns are being died, and in every house, in every Egyptian house, there's someone who's dying, and Paro is panicking. Why? Because he's the firstborn too, and he doesn't want to die. So he goes, now he had told Moshe, don't come here again. And Moshe said, you're right. And Moshe is thinking, because next time you're going to come find me. I'm not going to come to you. And that's exactly what happened. Paro came running, and the kids love singing the song, Paro in pajamas in the middle. The night, Paro in pajamas, Pharaoh in the pajamas in the middle of the night, right? So Pharaoh comes looking for, okay, you can go. And Moshe says, we can't wait till sunrise. We can't go middle of the night. We're not sneaking out. So the Jewish people leave finally with the dough on their backs that turned into matzah, and they end up being in Egypt for 270 years servitude. We're supposed to be 400, but one of the answers is because the Egyptians were so mean that the 270 was concentrated, was equal to 400. And the Parsha tells us some of the mitzvahs that have connection to help us remember God's miracles when he took us out of Egypt. The Pesach Seder, the Tefillin, Shema, when we talk about God, we talk about other things, but we always mention that we remember that God took us out of Egypt. So there is a lot going on. Now, I will say something interesting. I'll conclude with an interesting thought that some of the great rabbis say. The number 10 is significant. What do you know that's 10?
Commandments.
What?
The commandments.
10 commandments. What else? Yeah, 10 Jewish things, not just fingers, yes? 10 plagues, and the 10 utterances where God created the world. The world was created with God's 10 utterances. So what happens is, the Hasidic masters say a beautiful idea. They say that when God created the world, his presence was there in the world. But after a while, people stopped seeing it. So what happened was, God had to do the 10 plagues to reveal God's presence in the world, in the physical sense, to see that he is in charge. And then that leads to the 10 commandments, where God's revelation is even greater. So the 10 utterances were hidden, and then the 10 plagues revealed it again, and then God was able to reveal himself with the 10 commandments. Rav Gedalia Shor has a beautiful idea that shows the correspondence of at least 2 of the 10, that it starts backwards. The last plague was the sin of the killing of the firstborns. That corresponds to Bereshis, the first utterance in the beginning, because the firstborn is the beginning of the family, right? The second one, let there be light, that corresponds to the plague of darkness. So the Almighty revealed himself through the 10 plagues so that the Jewish people and the world will be able to get the 10 commandments. Very beautiful, beautiful idea. All right, questions, thoughts, comments?
I have a thought.
Yes, please.
When we say how we relate the mitzvah to the matzah, and the
Yes.
matzah is unleavened, it's flat. I think sometimes when we do a mitzvah, we become pompous or full of ourselves.
Very
and
good.
we become inflated.
Right. So be like a matzah so that we shouldn't feel boastful about it. Excellent. Very nice. Nice idea. Beautiful. Any other thoughts or comments? Going once, going twice. Soul to the lady in Israel. Take care, Diane. Feel good. All the best. Bracha in Vegas. Elisheva.
Thank you, Rabbi Czapnik.
Far away. Malka. Take care in Long Island. All the best.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.